Welcome to the Scandinavian Mind podcast, our weekly show about how technology is changing the creative industries. Today on the program, how to build a storytelling brand. We will go behind the scenes of Scandinavian MIND Agency, the services arm of our business. Today we will talk about the importance of being insights-driven in your communication, what brands can do to strengthen their trust and credibility, the need for community building and how editorial content can be a driver for that, and the story about why we started an agency in the first place. My name is Konrad Olsson, editor-in-chief and founder of Scandinavian Mind, and I'm here with our creative director and co-founder, Erik Olofsson, calling in from the North office. How are you, Erik?
I'm very good. I'm happy to be on air from the North office.
The North office of Umeå, where we have the design office where you and your colleagues do much of the creative work behind what you see on the Scandinavian Mind platform and what our clients see when we're doing the services arm. And that's what we're going to talk about today. It's a bit of a special episode. Usually we interview someone or we talk about the industries that we cover in our magazine, in our newsletter, our news feeds. So we thought it'd be a good idea to provide some inspiration and insights for our readers, many of whom work at brands, both in the tech industry, in the lifestyle industry. So in a way, it's kind of the same audience we serve, both with our insights and news content, as well as our agency. So sound good?
Sounds right. I mean, we always knew when we were pivoting to this new media brand that we have today, that we wanted to have at the same time build like a media company to have both the editorial platform covering these industries that we do, but also the service arm of an agency in tandem to that.
Maybe we should say a few words about the background of Scandinavian Mind Agency before we go into some of the insights we want to share that could be helpful for brands. Because sometimes when I meet people in the industry, colleagues who run other agencies, they kind of some people are surprised, what, you're running an agency as well? And I guess in a way we have been kind of protective of our brands. We haven't really marketed our agency, even though we've been running it for better part of the last 3 to 4 years. So and to me, you know, we took a decision this spring to kind of update this communication about ourselves. We launched this agency website, and we also now are starting to do more and more content around it in our own feeds. But I guess, you know, just one point around that is I kind of feel like we've been very protective about our editorial brand, the kind of the credibility and trust we've built up doing this editorial brand for 3 years has been really the focal point of the industry. And that goes into what we're going to talk about in terms of, you know, building an insights-driven communication and building this trust and credibility in the marketplace.
Yeah, definitely. But also about, you know, we have had a lot of stuff to do. So
Sure.
keeping busy, and we do a lot of stuff. So one part of it does it takes a little time to kind of complete a storyline for the agency and to promote it on a and build a website. So, but I'm glad we made that happen and to have it out there in the world.
For sure. And, you know, one thing we really try to communicate is we talk about insights-driven communication, and that kind of what stands us apart from other agencies, I think. And you know, one foundation of that is, of course, that we do run this magazine operation, this kind of insights operation. We have all the newsletters, we do the podcasting, we have all the events. We are kind of on the forefront of information gathering about these industries that we cover. And that kind of spills over into the agency in several ways. One is, I think, our clients really come to us because we have this kind of insight and knowledge about these industries. I think that's a huge plus. And the other is, of course, that we, you know, the way we communicate, the way we build our own brand spills over in how we help our clients build their brands.
and I think like one main differentiation from how we like our setup is that like if you take there's a lot of design studios, like coming from my point of view as a designer, there's a lot of
Mm,
design studios that might have some sort of magazine where they make cool layouts and attract talent to do great visual stories, and then they sort of harness uh, that like talent roster to be able to do campaign work for brands, and
right,
we
right.
we we do that as well. But our point of differentiation there is that we actually try to like the stuff that we produce is we trying to make it useful to our audience and to always try to extract intelligence from that. So we kind of the starting point of insights, we draw a lot from our own work, basically.
For sure. And I mean, there's no shortage of examples of kind of magazine operations that have turned into creative agencies. We see it all across the fashion industry. Fantastic Man has done, great work for brands like COS. We have, of course, Monocle that has a sister agency in Wing Creative. But I do think, to your point, actually carrying over the knowledge about these industries, I think that is where we set ourselves apart. It's not only about the execution, although we do a lot of production, we do a lot of creative work, we do a lot of content, output for our clients. But actually harnessing this favorite word of ours, harnessing the kind of insights, the knowledge about these industries that we have, I think that's really what sets us apart.
Yeah, and we made a little model that we call the Trinity, where we have
Yeah.
three cornerstones. We have first, you have like on the top you have the insights, and then you have brand, and then you have the communication, and it rotates back to insights again at the top of the triangle. And that's like that approach as a funnel is nothing new, but I suppose like if you look at it as a more of a loop, it becomes more interesting. um, and yeah, and also that what we just said, that the insights come from within this, like within ourselves, like within the company.
I want to dive into that more and how we work about it, but I think there's one other point to make before we go into sort of more granularly how we work, and that is this kind of what we call navigating an age of transformation, and I think that's a key part. It relates to this insights part so much, and the fact that these industries that we work with, whether we come from the technology side or from the fashion or lifestyle side, these are industries that are in kind of a perpetual transformation these days. Has been so the past few years and will be so in the foreseeable years to come. I mean, and this relates to, of course, sustainability issues. It relates to new customer behaviors, how new generations are changing how they consume products. This whole notion about being purpose driven is becoming more and more important for brands. So being inside is kind of turmoil of transformation that everyone has to kind of adhere to. You can only tackle that through knowledge. You need knowledge about what's happening. You need knowledge about the industries. You need knowledge about what's happening, and that kind of goes to the heart of why you should have this kind of insights driven approach.
To set the scene even more, I mean, coming out of the pandemic, or like in the middle of like coming into the 2020s, the what we can see is that the market is absolutely fiercely competitive,
Hmm.
and the consumer is demanding a lot more. Why basically, if you want to interact with a brand, then you need to answer that question, like why are you here at all, like
Hmm.
why should I care about this? Just acknowledging the peak of the attention economy, and what new generational technological and societal changes that the consumer is basing their attention on, basically.
And you have this term you always come back to, which I always like. It's like the importance of walking the walk instead of just talking the talk. Can you elaborate what you mean by that?
If you come from a set of values, and that's great, to talk about that in various ways, but it's also going to be even more important how you execute on them. What do you actually do? What
Mm,
intentions? Like, it's not only the intentions but the actions, on how you deliver on your promise, on your brand promise.
mm, mm,
And that, an editorial approach can also help inform what types of ambassadors, what types of collaborations, what types of events, and the content of the events. Like, it helps you to make all those decisions as well.
and this is I mean, I feel so strongly about this, and we feel strongly about this, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. But maybe we should talk a little bit about what we mean by editorial approach, because in a way, if you have this, we call it building a storytelling brand, building a brand based on purpose. You have to have a clear mission, and you have to have it for commercial reasons. You have to have it because your audience demands it. The audience demands brands to take a stance, to have a point of view, to have a clear mission. And the way to put that out there, it's not through one campaign or one statement or one tagline. It's about these kind of constant conversation with your audience. And if you have that, that's why we come back to this editorial approach. That is traditionally what a newspaper is or a magazine is. You are producing content, you are reporting on what's happening in your field or in your culture, or however you want to define your audience or the world you are working with, but kind of constantly talking about it, creating content, interviewing people, developing insights. If you do that on and on again, of course, then distributing it, through, if it's newsletters or a print magazine, or a plethora of different social medias, which any brand or any person are on these several different channels. If you do that over and over again, you cannot almost help by doing it authentically. You can't fake that over time. And I think this is where I think we help brands the most to make that um, pivot into the editorial approach, to work editorially with their communication, because it still doesn't come natural for brands, even though we live in this kind of perpetual state of content being created and published through all this social media. There's still so many brands that are uneasy about that. Whereas to me or to us, it's there's almost no other way you can do it, right?
It's about aligning over like a series of topics, or like your values related to topics with a clear point of view. That's
Mm,
basically what an editorial operation is about, and that's also what ultimately sparks communities, right?
yeah. No, I mean, for sure. And I think what's what's interesting, and we talk about this every day. So one thing we talked about the other day was, I think we dubbed it kind of the post performance marketing era. I don't know if, obviously, performance marketing is very important for many brands and companies. But I think we've had kind of an era the past kind of maybe 5-10 years where performance marketing took such a big slice of the pie, in a way, of the whole sort of marketing pie. And it's obvious why. It's measurable. You can kind of track your audience. It can lead to very concrete results. It can convert to paying consumers and so forth, but it's not the whole story, right? There are certain things you can't build uh, through this performance marketing approach, or how would you describe it?
I mean, for a good decade, we were. I mean, not we, but people like in general. The CMOs were obsessed with performance marketing, coming from like 2010 into the once again like into the 2020s, and rightly so, for all the reasons you just described. You can,
Mm,
you paid basically what you got. You paid for the clicks, or you paid the ambassadors through affiliate links, and you can measure everything like to learn a lot about your demographics. So it was, never before have we been able to get marketing that for like that efficiently for that price, right?
mm,
But then what happened when you lean too much into that and you forget about the brand, it just becomes hollow in the end. So,
mm,
and coming back to consumers demanding more than just competing over price, and adding to the performance marketing logic versus brand marketing is that we come to know that you really need both. And with an editorial approach, you can basically, uh, since a lot of the outputs are created for
mm.
a lot of various channels, you can also use that to boost your performance marketing, or even use the same assets.
No, for sure. And we've kind of backed into working with performance marketing. It's not really our expertise. Usually, brands have some kind of digital agency that they're working with, or we provide one when we work with them. But what we realize, since we are coming from the content side of things, that we're the ones delivering the assets for these paid ads and so forth, and usually they are performing much better than what a performance marketing person would do. Obviously we're kind of speaking towards our own case here, but that's usually what happens, and of course you need both. That's nothing strange, but I think what brands are realizing more and more is that to be able to build brand, to build something that people actually can resonate with and talk about and share with their friends, you need to think, you think about this conversation that you want to have with your audience. And I really love the likeness of having a conversation, that term, having a conversation, because you can't really have a conversation that's inauthentic. A conversation, per definition, is authentic, and then it naturally kind of falls back on purpose. It naturally falls back on what is your mission, what do you want to tell, what's the story you want to tell to the world, and you have to think about those things. So it kind of, if you take it seriously, it kind of falls into place kind of naturally. But obviously, there's a process to it. You can build it. You can, we have certainly have processes for how we help brands with it. Um, but let's talk a little bit more about this kind of point of differentiation.
I see it as two main components, where you have, at first you have the point of differentiation, where your purpose is, a large part of that, but also like what's special about your product, what's special about your services. And by talking continuously about that, writing stories, speaking, and visual storytelling across some multiple channels, by doing that in a long-term trajectory, you actually earn the other main part of a brand, that is trust and credibility.
Mm,
So you need to not only have something to say, but also be credible in the way you present it, and that by continue to talk about this in a believable way. There, in that way, you're gonna earn that trust and credibility. So by starting from your by basically conveying your point of differentiation, to earn trust and credibility. That's the way I look at it.
no, absolutely, and it's kind of about playing the long game. There are no there are no fast wins, there are no short wins. You have to do this long term, and by showing the audience, showing the world that you're in it for the long term, I think that's also a way of gaining that trust, that credibility. And Maybe that's a good way to sum it up. That's what we've been doing with Scandinavian Mind now for 3 years. We certainly gained a lot of trust in the market, both from our readers through by virtue of the content we produce, but also from our dear clients that we're working with.
Yeah, it's a long-term bet. It's a long-term trajectory, no doubt.
All right, Erik, let's try to wrap this up. This has been an interesting episode diving into our approach working with Scandinavian Mind Agency. Is there any closing remarks, anything we've forgotten about? Obviously, there's much more to talk about. Anything else you want to mention?
I think that when I was preparing a little bit before this talk, I kind of reflected on what have I been doing so far in my career. Like for 20 plus years, I've been
Yeah.
a designer and an art director, and I've been working with in two main arenas. That is visual identity, working with branding and the visual aspect of it, and also editorial design. So when I thought about it that way, it's like, why it's not a far-fetched to why this feels like this editorial approach feels very obvious and natural to me, because it's sort of when you put these two things together that I've been focusing on for my whole professional life, that's kind of, this is the point of view that comes out.
Well, everything kind of comes together, and I think that's why we're so happy to do what we do, and that's why what we do feels relevant. And as another closing remark, I think that's why we also felt like we wanted to create more content around the work we do in branding, how to create brands and work with branding in perhaps a different way. And I think it could actually be very useful for our audience to learn more about this. So consider this like a first step. We'll come back to this topic in this podcast, and we have some other ideas around reports we want to produce. We're currently deep into looking at how AI is changing this field. We'll get back to that. And before we close out, I just want to mention we have a couple of events coming up with Scandinavian Mind. First, there's, of course, Beauty Innovation Talks happening in Stockholm next week, October 25. If you email us kindly, we might be able to squeeze you in, but it's a pretty packed room by now. It's going to happen at our head offices at Grev Turegatan 30 in Stockholm. And early in November, we'll be hosting our first event around virtual creativity. We'll get back to you on that, but that's November 8th, also in Stockholm. Super excited about that event in Stockholm, focusing on I don't know, kind of the new era of creatives, or how do you want to define it, Erik?
I don't even know. Like that's why we do it, because we want to learn. Want to learn about the new arenas, the new strategies, the new ways of working.
Exactly. Case in point. Anyways, if you want to get up to date on all this content and all these events, do follow our newsletter. Visit scandinavianmind.com/newsletter. Until next week, goodbye.